Questions are rolling in now. So let's, Mobius Zero says, why do people think that war between the U.S. and China will not happen in any lifetime? Taiwan, the general's prediction, and anti-China sentiment. How is war not practically fate or destiny at this point? What do you think, Brian?
Every aspect in the U.S. Government, military, media is gearing up for war and trying to provoke war with China. That in every single way, the U.S. is doing absolutely everything it can to start a war with China now, sooner than later, because like I said, it only gets worse for the U.S. each year. Danny, I don't know if I talked about the CSIS Taiwan war game with you, but they put out this war game and they said, we'll win, but winning was all life, industry, and infrastructure on Taiwan being scoured off of the island. They would politically remain autonomous, but at the cost of their physical existence. So that's where they see right now, and every year from now into the future, that outcome will just become worse and worse for the U.S. So they know that, and they're trying to provoke a war. China is trying to avoid a war at all costs, and it's a two-pronged process where they're trying to build up their military to deter the United States. If their military is powerful enough, there's no way Washington is going to convince the Pentagon to do this, because it'll be suicide. And then also on the other hand, they're just trying to work together with anyone else who will work with them and move on without the U.S. until the U.S. is ready to work constructively with them as equals, which is such a simple thing to do, but for the U.S. apparently not.
Well, the sociopathy here in narcissism is just incredible, because CSIS has done this. I believe CNAC, the Center for New CNAS, the Center for New American Security, they've had war simulations, and they all conclude that there's going to be, these are all weapons contractor funded, U.S. government funded think tanks, but they all conclude that, the destruction is going to be intense. What's so narcissistic about it is this inability to see that actually it's going to not only be destructive for China, it's going to be destructive for the United States and for the entire West. Any kind of shockwave, we've already seen it with Russia, Ukraine, any kind of shockwaves that are sent toward these major emerging powers and now outright global powers at this point is going to backfire heavily. And it has already when it comes to Russia. With China, I think the consequences are just that much more profound.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's see. Another question here. Here we go from Tish. They're asking, Brian, is there anything the U.S. regime can do to prove that they can be trusted by Russia, especially with the call for his head and regime change? So is there anything the U.S. can do to win over trust from Russia?
No, and the United States, the current interests in power right now would never seek to get Russia to trust them unless it was to just betray them again. And I don't think people say that Putin was tricked. I don't think that he was actually tricked. I don't think Russia was tricked. I think they knew all along the U.S. was acting in bad faith, but they had to go through the motions to prove that at least they were acting in good faith. They went through the motions, they went through the procedures, they made the sacrifices, and they lost on their end trying to do the right thing and to meet somewhere in the middle, like reasonable people. And it was the U.S. Make it clear to the world that it was the U.S. who provoked all of this and is in the wrong. I don't think for a moment, if I knew that they had no intention of honoring any of this and they were just playing for time, surely Russia knew. They knew, but they had to go through the motions. Now, what will actually happen, so when we think long term, what will happen for any nation to trust the United States again will be a completely different circle of special interests coming to power and running and directing U.S. foreign and domestic policy, and that'll be very obvious to all. And you will see them pursuing interests that are mutually beneficial to themselves and everyone else, which is pretty much how every other country in the world, except for some reason in the West, conducts their foreign policy. I know it sounds hard to believe, but it actually is true.
So Mobius Zero is another question. Are any U.S. politicians anti-China? Are there any that exist? I mean, if people think war with China will never happen, I mean, what do you think, Brian? Have you observed any?
I can't think of any. And the thing that's constantly shocks me on a daily basis are people who pop up in my comment section, and then you have politicians who are exactly like this too, where they're like,
Right.
Brian, you're absolutely right about Ukraine. Your analysis on Ukraine, no one does a better job than you, but you're 100% wrong about Taiwan. And then they start listing literally talking points right out of the U.S. State Department, and I just wonder where that comes from. And I really do think that it comes from this Western supremacy and also racism. And I know it is a huge factor. I'm an American. I grew up in America, and I was surrounded by people who they've just looked at Chinese people and Asian people in general as caricatures, cartoon characters, living stereotypes. They did not respect them. They looked down on them. They, instead of looking at the differences and learning something from them, they looked down on them for them. And this goes from the ground level in America all the way up to the leadership, and the leadership is encouraging it. You know how sensitive the U.S. is about certain issues regarding race and religion, but it seems like it's open season for Asians, and it has been for years and years. It just gets worse every time I check. It gets worse.
Yeah, and I mean, war propaganda to wage wars. We were talking about this earlier with regard to the earthquake before we came on live. You have tens of thousands of people in Turkey, in Syria, dead from an earthquake, and you have the U.S. maintaining sanctions on Syria. And in order to do such profoundly cruel acts and policies, and to torture people, to hurt people, to kill people en masse for your geopolitical interests, for your narrow interests, the only way you have to dehumanize. And you've talked about this, I know, with Carl and Mark Sloboda on your programs about Chinese history. I mean, how could the U.S. enforce an open door? How could the U.S. try to subordinate China for the last, several hundred years without some kind of ideology? Europe was a huge participant in it too, the Yellow Peril. So all of this is real. I mean, you can't divorce it from the geopolitics, because no matter where you look in the world, where the U.S. is waging war, where NATO is waging war, there is an ideology of dehumanization that backs it up. It's 100% necessary in their eyes.
Think about this. The stereotype that Asian people have no creativity, and all of the technology that China has, they just copied the West. And these are tropes that you see all throughout racist anti-Asian circles all across the West. And then it manifests itself in Western foreign policy. And they accuse China of stealing intellectual property, and everything that they have they stole from us, because only white people can come up with these ideas. Certainly not the people who invented paper and gunpowder and everything like that when we were still living in the dirt. But never mind that. And this is how you can see the racist tropes that everyday people have floating around in their minds, and it goes all the way up to actual policy being constructed and used on the global stage.
Yeah, no, it's 100%
Well,
true.
we were also talking right before the show about I forget what the guy's name is. Maybe he's some policy wonk.
Yeah,
or
let me
media
bring
guy.
up. I can bring. I got the tweet up. I don't know what he is. He worked on Mitt Romney's campaign. He's some kind of Republican Party something or other. We can call him just a China watcher here, but he's not really a China watcher. He just adopts
China
their
hater.
politics.
Yeah, he's
China
a China
hater.
hater.
Exactly. So actually, let me before I pull it up, let me just make sure it's paused, because it's one of these Douyin videos. All right, so here we go. We're gonna pull up the video of his name is Aaron Jin is his name.
Yeah.
So he says Don't visit China anytime soon. Going anywhere requires signing up for their social credit system. And here is the video in question. All right. And then we can I will just read a reply or two to thoroughly debunk this nonsense and then get your comments, Brian. Here we go.
Use this QR code with WeChat.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's great.
that's when you use it. Use the QR code to log in. Here. Do you have your password?
It sounds.
So that's all we need to watch for that. It's almost a minute long. But of course, the implication here is that this child is basically enforcing the social credit system in China. And then there's some really interesting replies. Here is one. So this went viral on Douyin, which is the Chinese TikTok. And it says it went viral with over 500,000 likes because a kid in China is helping a pretty looking foreigner use WeChat at a supermarket. Nothing to do with social credit score. So that's the image of that. And of course, Arnaud Bontrand, he also had a little thread about it. But you did a video, Brian, on social credit. And also you've done a lot on this propaganda war on China. What are your thoughts about this? Because I feel like this goes right into what we were just talking about with dehumanizing China. I mean, this is a child. It's so obvious. You just watch the video. This child's just helping these people figure something out.
You can hear him say about WeChat Pay. And so
Yeah,
what a lot of
their
Westerners,
password? He's like trying to help them. Yeah.
what a lot of Westerners who have never traveled abroad don't understand is that there is another, there are countries outside of the West. They have their own banks and they have their own social media platforms and their own financial services and payment services other than what the West offers. And when you go to, say, a supermarket, even here in Thailand has huge banks, and they all have their different payment systems. And if you want to do something like a cashless payment, you have to be in their system. They don't care what you're using in America. It's Thailand. They don't care. Just like America wouldn't care that you're from Thailand. You have some ties, to an American obscure system from Thailand. They don't care. You got to use the system that's being used there in that country. And that's all that was going on in that video. Had nothing to do with social credit. And I've looked into social credit because I wanted to know, why are people asking me about social credit? So I looked into it and I put a whole video together about it. And it was all based on Western media articles, not a single article from China or even a source that could be conceived as pro-Chinese. These were all extremely anti-Chinese articles when you read through them. But when you read the entire article and think about what they're actually saying, they're saying, no, it doesn't exist the way people think it does. A lot of it is common sense things, like if you're on a train and you're smoking in a train, they're going to put your name in the system. You're not going to be able to go on the train again. It's like, why would you want someone who's blatantly breaking safety and health rules to be on the train? And you see this all over the world and manifests itself in all different ways. China's just using technology because they've got 1.4 billion people. You can go to like a convenience store in America and they'll have pictures of people's faces that can't be served there because they've written bad checks or something. Like that used to be a thing, and they would put your face right there near the cash register. So that's all that is. But these people, they know it's not true, but they also know that Americans don't know what's going on out of the country, and they'll believe these lies because they already have they're prejudiced already. And it won't take much. They want to believe the lie. They want to believe that China's evil and backwards and gross and weird. They want to believe that. So they'll buy into these stories no matter how flimsy they actually are and how little evidence exists to substantiate them.
And I think forces like this, people like Aaron Jin, they have to make it really scary, because one of the things I think even just in this video that is revealed is that you have people from the West very confused, do not know how to even use this kind of technology. When I was there, I couldn't. I mean, I couldn't. First of all, I didn't. I think it's probably the case that those who are being helped, those foreigners from the West, they might have a deeper relationship in China and just don't understand. I mean, WeChat Pay is quite complex. It's different. It's digital payments, and it is an advancement in technology, especially financial technology, which the alarm bells are already being sounded. You have people at Credit Suisse, you have huge Western financiers talking about how concerning it is that there are these digitalized currencies coming about, these digitalized central bank currencies. You have de-dollarization, all of this. I think part of this is just a deliberate propaganda campaign to deflect from what actually is happening, which is China is surpassing the West, and actually emerging economies will follow right along at some point in the future if they are successful in charting this multipolar world.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that China, who supposedly they can't come up with any ideas on their own, but they're actually leading the world in multiple fields, including financial technology. And you're exactly right, because if that was a video of some kid helping a woman with her Visa or MasterCard, this wouldn't be an issue, because hey, they're using our stuff, so that's great. Not move along, nothing to see here. But they have their own unique system. This is what allows someone like Aaron to prey on ignorant people, because people don't know about these other systems, and then they just look at it. They don't know what it is, so he's saying it's social credit, so in their mind they believe it's social credit. It surely couldn't be Chinese people coming up with their own system that is as good or better than what the West uses on a day-to-day basis.
So we just have one more question, and then we can close out. Irish Partisan asks, do you see global conflict, World War III, breaking out this decade? Will it be Russia, China versus the West? Your thoughts, Brian? It's an ominous question, but a good one. It's trending all the time on Twitter.
Yeah, we're in it right now. This is already World War III. It's just a question of how far is it going to go. Like I said, the U.S. is killing Chinese people right now all around the world, using terrorists that they arm and back to do it. They have opposition. Like I mentioned, I mentioned several examples in Pakistan. The U.S. for many years now has been backing Baluchistan separatism, and this is to disrupt the China-Pakistan economic corridor. And they have terrorists who just literally kill Chinese engineers, blow up infrastructure, and they also made an attempt on the Chinese ambassador's life at a hotel. And this was all, I mean, this has spanned many years, and it's going on even this year, right now, 2023. And in Myanmar, the military there ousted the U.S. client regime that they installed into power, just like they installed the client regime into power in Georgia 2003, Ukraine 2014. The military ousted it, and then the U.S. is backing this opposition. They're carrying out terrorism. Just if the U.S. can't have it, nobody will. So they're just trying to destroy Myanmar. But again, also, while they're doing all of this, they are deliberately attacking Chinese factories. There's a Chinese pipeline that is part of the Belt and Road Initiative that runs through Myanmar that they've attacked. And even here in Thailand, there's for now, there's no major violent movement in Thailand, but the U.S.-backed opposition here has openly come out and said they want to cancel the Thai-Chinese high-speed rail. And they are completely backed up one side and down the other by the U.S., the National Endowment for Democracy. So this is what the U.S. is doing in absolutely every single country. And you have people being killed. That is already a proxy war. Ukraine is a proxy war. Syria is a proxy war. The deadly violence unfolding all over Iran, that is a proxy war. When you really add it all up, it is World War III. Just because of the threat of direct conflict and the possibility of a nuclear exchange, they're doing it by proxy. So it's kind of a slow motion version of a world war. And it's just a matter of how far it escalates.
Yeah, and also it feels like also a matter of the conditions just being different in 2023 than World War One or World War Two. You know, you had immense competition then between these European imperial powers, colonial powers, the United States lumping in there. There was intense competition among them. But ever since World War II, the end of it, of course, US has reigned supreme as the superpower. And that has run its course. And so now the dynamic is, as the Irish partisan asked, Russia, China versus the West. But it's even bigger than that because it really is a global South. It is this kind of formerly colonized, or in some cases still colonized world, moving out of the vice grip of US hegemony. And that means, yeah, the conditions are different. And it's also happening at a time where, as that's happening, the world is much closer together. It is more dependent. The US dollar system did that, globalization did that. But really, the rise of these emerging economies in the global South has also done that, because the more that they rise, the more that China rises, Russia builds up its strength again, and the rest of the countries in Africa and Latin America begin to also climb out of underdevelopment, the more that the world becomes dependent on them and dependent on what happens to them. And that means that the shock waves and the way that war is fought is much different, but at the same time, no less, I think, important. And this World War III label maybe needs to be broadened out and become a little, I guess, more sophisticated in its definition for our purposes.
Absolutely. I just noticed in the comment section, people asking, what is your evidence that the U.S. is backing Baluchi separatism? I've done many videos. I lay it all out, and I have links directly to the National Endowment for Democracy's webpage, where they list the Baluchistan groups that they're backing, how they're involved in their politics. And this goes for any other group that I talk about being backed by the U.S. I will not say it unless I have substantial evidence. Regarding Baluchistan specifically, all the way back in 2011, in Congress, they were trying to pass bills and resolutions about supporting Baluchistan independence. So it is a irrefutable fact that they are backing them. Yes.